Capcom had a Spotlight presentation last night as we record this about several upcoming video games, and of course Resident Evil Requiem was one of them. Not lots of stuff to look at in terms of gameplay, but certainly a few topics for conversation that we can dig into here, little tidbits that are worth expanding upon. I'm Psy for First Aid Spray. Hello survivors, joined today by James.
Hello, it's me, James, here at my house.
It's you, James, again to do another kind of breaking news. Where we're doing we're doing news videos now.
We're a news channel. We're a gaming news channel now.
This just in, Capcom apparently always wanted Leon to be the protagonist in Resident Evil Requiem, but that's not going to be the case because, as has been, much talked about by us and really everyone else who follows Resident Evil at this point, he's not really a character that works when it comes to horror. He's, as they've put it in this creator's message that went out last night and in the short video as part of the Capcom Spotlight, he's not going to be jumping at buckets falling off of shelves and stuff. He's a hardened soldier. So that's why they've gone the route of Grace. That said, because they have specifically mentioned Leon by name and they didn't say that he wasn't in this game, speculation about his appearance in Requiem, whether or not it's going to be a thing, is definitely rife. How are you feeling about this? Do you feel like this is a big misdirect? Because I feel like this. I would put money on this now at this point. Don't gabble, kids, but
there was a face that the director had on his lovely face after he said that. The
face of a cheeky scamp.
It did. He did have a face of a scoundrel. Someone who does shenanigans. It was like I'm in two minds. So I'm still in the mind, even though with that face, because it could be a double misdirect. It was just so obvious when I was looking at him, right? And I'm a very suspicious person in gaming in particular. but the mention of Leon as a potential idea for the protagonist, it could mean I guess it could mean he's there, whatever. But I don't love that. But it could just be a face value thing that the internet has ran away with leaks that had zero truth to them. So I really don't want a carbon copy of what we had with Chris again. I don't want a section with just Leon, and if it is, this is what I wanted for Chris. I want it to actually mean something. So if Leon is going to have his moment to shine, I really want it to be meaningful rather than just bringing biceps and thighs in, and a completely OP weapon set, and nothing happening, because there needs to be some risk and consequences here.
I think that's the thing for me, and we talked about this before, is that the concern that it would be like an overshadowing thing, and that's sort of, you could argue about that a little bit in Village, how Chris kind of being that he ends the game, aside from the final boss fight, but he comes in and saves the day and all this stuff. It did sort of rob some of Ethan's agency away, and there's definitely concern about that. But I think they are being, this is just how I kind of see it. I think they're doing this because they're trying to tell us that Grace is an equal part character or the most important character. They're really focusing on hair. They talked a lot about her hair, in fact.
They did, and her sweat.
And her sweat and the redness of her face.
The quivering of her lips.
That was an interesting one. Be interested to see exactly if that comes across in gameplay, that she's going to have quivery, scared lip. But I don't know. I feel like I get the whole face value thing. And maybe they're trying to calm people down and say, hey, we thought about Leon, but maybe it's not a good idea. But the reaction that has happened is exactly what they should have expected.
Yeah.
So by mentioning it now, I think that may have been an ill choice if it's a face value thing. But I do think that they're sort of teasing us, and the result is because there's going to be two playable characters of two totally different types, equal parts, or maybe Grace is slightly larger because she has, led the character they led with in terms of the role within the game. We talked about it before, where the perspective choice menu had recommended next to first person for the playable section for Grace, but that's not to say that there isn't sections where it swaps to third person, and maybe there's a character that's a bit more action packed then that suits. They've described the game as having cinematic action as well as horror, and we haven't seen any of that yet. Obviously, we haven't really seen anything yet.
Yeah.
So there's things here that get me kind of like going, I'm not so sure that we've seen the full picture yet.
Yeah, they've also said, and they've said this a couple of times, and I'm glad they said it because there are a lot of people online. There's a lot of people online who don't think. I'm just going to say it. There are a lot of people online who think the women can't be capable, right? And they started when we first heard about this game. We heard that Grace was kind of very doddery and very awkward and very cute in that way, and just wasn't capable at all. But she's an FBI agent, so she definitely is capable. And then in this showcase, we learned that she can handle herself. As you go through the game, they even mention it. They said as you go through the game, she will become more confident and have more courage and will become more action orientated towards the end. But they even showed you her handling a weapon in this showcase as well, which by the way was a VP-70 gun, which is the gun that was used by Gorman and Alien. So you got to keep the streak of the mentioning Alien in every piece of content.
Hey, you know who else used that VP-70? Leon S. Kennedy.
Oh, God. No, he did.
In terms of the other thing as well that I wanted to mention, and I forgot about this, sort of related to what I was just saying, is that at the Game Awards, Jeff Keighley said that this game had like an impressive scope and that kind of thing, which, in reference to what I was just talking about, makes me think, we've got multiple playthroughs and stuff like that. But also, I guess, leads me to the other thing that I wanted to talk about here. In the creator's message, they showed a little bit of really blurry footage of like a beta test of a game that presumably is not happening, where they talked about doing an open world multiplayer Resident Evil game and then not pursuing that direction and going somewhere else with Requiem. So we are to assume then, despite much speculation, including from ourselves, we talked about it at length, is open world or quasi open world the direction that Resident Evil is going to go. It seems like that's not the case. I still think that, with Jeff Keighley talking about scale, that this is probably going to be more lots of kind of individual hub sort of situations. We keep going back to the lake from Resident Evil 4 Remake as being a great example of like having that freedom for a little spell before you move on. I would expect it to be something like that rather than traditional. It's not going to be a Ubisoft game, for example. But I guess we have confirmation that it's not open world, rather. How are you feeling about that?
So I want to kind of mention, like, folks' ideas in gaming of what an open world is are very varied. Like, if you look, like, when it comes to open world, for me, like, I mean, actually, forget what I just said. In terms of development, like, the term of open world is varied. It's the same as the term multiplayer is very varied as well. I don't think anyone expects a Witcher 3 level of open world in Resident Evil.
No.
But I just like you, Psy, I do expect large sprawling districts with hubs. And there'll be, you can go back and kind of explore those hubs. So, and that typically wouldn't be seen as open world, like, to the general gaming public and some developers, right? But it is it's the same with multiplayer, right? Like I'll mention Alien again. Aliens Fighting Elite. When that game was in development, they actually tried to get a job there for one of their recruitment. It's how I learned about this, is that they were recruiting people who knew about massive multiplayer online role-playing games.
Right.
And if you play Aliens Fireteam Elite, that is not what people would typically see as an MMORPG. So yeah, they just to keep everybody's kind of expectations down, like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a huge world to discover. It just means it's going to be a lot of, like, it could be a lot of just sprawling districts you can just explore and wander through. And there might be some dead ends, but it would be lovely to just explore Raccoon City, because I think that's what people really, really wanted for a long time. And like, in terms of the multiplayer aspect as well, like I there was something that they mentioned that I kind of raised my eyebrow at, and it was that they were saying that players don't want Resident Evil multiplayer games. Yes, players do want they want a very particular type of Resident Evil online multiplayer game, which, if you had a look at that creator message, it looked quite similar to a particular online multiplayer game. So that felt a little bit like a red herring to me. So they have the skeleton there, it looked like, so they could. It doesn't mean that it's off the table. It just means that this game will not be bringing it. You know?
I do think this is going to be one of those things now, because we've seen this little tiny clip of it. If this game doesn't happen, it's just going to be one of those things that people talk about forevermore. Like, I wanted this, and it's like, you don't even know. Like, I get it. Like, I also would like a good online multiplayer Resident Evil game. Sure, I'm not opposed to it. But this sort of like 6 seconds, you don't even know what this is. Like, people are already jumping to conclusions about it, like who the characters are and stuff. There's not that you can really tell, because it's all dark and intentionally blurred, because it was all very much like early testing stuff. I agree in terms of the scope of the game and the exploration. I think going full open world, and again, everyone has a different opinion or a different kind of measuring of what that is. And every game should have a different measure of open world. But if you were to take something like, people were really excited to explore Raccoon City in Resident Evil 3 Remake, for example, and we didn't necessarily get that. We got the first section, but then after that it got, very much like a railroaded linear thing. If you were to take that first section and, quadruple the size or more and like plot a few of those through a game, that could be very exciting to me. And that's very much part of Resident Evil's DNA, exploring little, or rather in this case, large hub areas rather than a full open world with fast travel and stuff like this. The only other little thing that I just wanted to touch on before we wrap this up is that there was a lot of discussion about when this game takes place. We know at the very earliest it would be 2025, because it's said that Alyssa Ashcroft died 8 years ago, and the last we've heard from her is 2017, 2016 in Resident Evil 7. So it'll be 2024, 2025 at earliest. They have said something along the lines of, I think it was almost 30 years, or around, I think was the wording, 30 years ago. So that kind of confirms that it's going to be 2026, maybe literally 30 years ago at 2028. But I think the important thing there is, for the people making speculations that this is going to be set further in the future, people who are potentially looking for Rose to come back into the fray, for example, that seems unlikely, because she'll be about 5 or 6 years old in the canon at this point, rather than 2037 when she's all grown up for Shadows of Rose. It's not set then, it is set more in the present day, which again makes sense. I think that they're selling on 30 years of Resident Evil, you also want to sell it on 30 years of the Raccoon City incident. So it's nice to have that confirmed somewhat. Looking forward to getting some very specific dates hopefully when we get to the game. But
yeah, it's I mean, you can't. I think they're being deliberately vague with this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're being deliberately, especially because there's a lot of questions about the locations at the moment, and I think they're deliberately keeping those things under wraps. And I'm not even going to imagine why. Because I like to be surprised when I play video games, and horror video games. But yeah, it would be very interested to see when it's going to be set. And yeah, it's definitely, Rose is not going to turn up. Actually, if Rose and Grace are in the same game, I'd find it hard to actually differentiate between the two. Like they're kind of very similar looking, to be honest.
Well, you say that, but like I say, Rose would be 5 years old, so I'm pretty sure you could differentiate.
through the power of viruses, she would.
This is true.
She's grown to the age of 17 in 5 years for some reason.
Yeah. Possibly so. Cool. That'll do it for this news video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more of this kind of coverage of Requiem going forward, plus podcast clips and everything else that we do. Thank you for checking this out. Thank you for checking out all of our Requiem coverage so far. Thank you, James, for joining me.
Yeah, well, sorry. Yeah, I'm here. Keep that in. Keep that in. Going live.
Yep. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for watching, and have a good week.
Bye, guys.